To understand why you're stuck, we have to rewind to that very first hit when your brain tagged them as special and locked the circuit into place. The first hit, neurochemistry of destiny. So you meet them for the first time, or maybe they suddenly pop back into your life, and bam, your body answers before you can even remember your own name. That massive rush you're calling destiny is actually just your reward system firing on all cylinders. The ventral tegmental area starts shooting dopamine straight into the nucleus accumbens, which is the part of your brain that flags things as new and important. It's basically like your brain took a giant yellow highlighter to this person and told you that they're the only thing on the page that matters. Norepinephrine surges right alongside that dopamine, cranking up your arousal and focus until your hands start to shake and you're tracking every single tiny expression on their face. The room starts to blur around them because your brain is using the same system it flips on during a life or death threat, which is exactly why intense attraction can feel a lot like a panic attack. Your heart races, your appetite completely disappears, and your sleep starts to fracture into tiny pieces. It feels like a spiritual awakening, but if you look at the data, it reads a lot more like a high-stress medical event. Oxytocin and vasopressin slide into the mix like the closes of a deal, with oxytocin riding on the back of every touch, every tone of voice, and even simple eye contact. Vasopressin acts more like a guard dog by wiring in feelings of possessiveness and territory to help maintain a pair bond. You barely even know this person yet, but your body is already drafting a legal contract that says ours in big bold letters. This is what happens during fast imprinting under high arousal, and your brain absolutely loves to glue your most vivid memories to these massive emotional spikes. Think about those flashbulb moments where you remember exactly where you were, what song was playing, and even how their jacket smelled because the hippocampus is filing it all away while the amygdala brands it with heat. Here's the thing about reward prediction error that you need to understand. Your dopamine neurons don't just fire when you get a reward. They fire when the outcome is way better than you expected. When their text pings 5 minutes sooner than you thought it would, or they laugh just a little bit harder than you hoped, your brain starts shouting that this is incredibly important. Prediction errors are how we learn, and the steeper that positive surprise is, the stronger the special tag becomes in your mind. This is the exact same way slot machines hook people with variable wins and unexpected highs, because intermittent reinforcement makes the learning process deep, sticky, and hard to break. Meanwhile, your HPA axis is warming up in the background as your cortisol rises and shifts your internal clock. Now you're wide awake at 2 a.m, scrolling through their feed and rehearsing future conversations while hunting for any sign that they feel the same way. You call this synchronicity, but your insula just calls it salience, and the resulting sleep loss pushes your prefrontal cortex into a low-power mode. This means your impulse control goes out the window, and you start making up elaborate stories to make these massive feelings make sense. Destiny bias slides right in to convince you that if you feel this big, it must mean something equally big is happening. Early conversations quickly get framed as omens, like when you realize you both love the same obscure indie song from 10 years ago. Sure, it's a cool coincidence, but your dopamine just turned your pattern detection settings up to 11. Apophenia is the tendency to see patterns in random noise, and it shows up whenever your salience spikes like this. It isn't a moral failure or a sign from the stars. It's just a settings issue in your hardware. The same system that kept your ancestors alive by spotting a rustle in the grass is now spotting messages from the universe in a random Spotify playlist. Imagine you're at a coffee shop and they accidentally brush your hand while passing the sugar, sending a tiny jolt through your arm. Oxytocin hums and norepinephrine sharpens the moment so intensely that your brain now associates the smell of roasted beans and sugar with their face. 2 weeks later, you can't stir a cup of coffee without craving the sound of their voice because of the cue-triggered learning happening in your hippocampus amygdala loop. Your brain is incredibly efficient at building these associations with smells, songs, and routes home, but it can also be absolutely brutal. If you were already stressed out before you met them, maybe from work pressure, grief, or a recent breakup, your system was already primed for this. Bonding actually accelerates when we are under stress because oxytocin rises to try and soothe us. But when it's paired with high cortisol, it can make you cling to the very thing causing the spike. It's a lot like hugging the safety bar on a roller coaster to feel secure during the big drop. It's fast, it's deep, and it's incredibly confusing for your heart. Now, the first proof finally lands when they text you at the exact moment you were thinking about them. Reward prediction error lights up again because the timing was better than expected, and you immediately stamp the moment as fate. The truth is much simpler when you consider the billions of thoughts and dozens of pings we deal with. But because this one overlap happened under high arousal, it feels sacred. Post-diction kicks in, and you start rewriting your own memory to make the whole thing look inevitable. You tell yourself that you knew it would happen, but the reality is that you just felt it, and your brain is sacrificing accuracy for a coherent story. What nobody ever tells you is that the calm, steady attention of a securely interested person usually generates much smaller dopamine peaks. It's rewarding and healthy, but it's also predictable, which doesn't trigger the same important alarm in your head. In contrast, the maybe yes, maybe no dance of an inconsistent person blasts you with constant surprises that your nervous system reads as high importance. Intermittent contact doesn't just keep you guessing, it keeps you learning at a lightning-fast pace. Every unpredictable reply and every sudden burst of warmth after a cold distance becomes a jackpot that keeps you chasing the variance rather than the person. The impact of all this is that within a few weeks, your inner narrator starts to harden its stance. You tell yourself this must be fate because you've never felt like this before, but your prior love stories probably didn't combine novelty, sleep debt, and cortisol quite this intently. The map in your head starts to redraw itself around them until the streets seem shorter when you're heading to their door. Your entire day begins to hinge on their notifications, work gets fuzzier, and you stop noticing the sunsets unless you're taking a picture to send to them. Because your prefrontal cortex is dipping while you're underslept and overstimulated, you start bargaining with every red flag you see. You tell yourself they're just busy or that the long silence is just expansion, mistaking your own vigilance for true devotion. That sense of being home you feel after they finally give you a breadcrumb of attention is just your cortisol dropping, not a destiny checkpoint. The chemistry is very real, but the meaning you choose to pin to it is completely optional. While chemistry set the trap, your history chose the bait, and your nervous system didn't pick this person at random. It was scanning for a template it already knew, meaning that what felt like recognition was just familiarity wearing perfume. Why this person fits, you're wound. To understand why you clicked with this person so fast, we have to talk about templates. Specifically, your attachment templates. Think of these as your nervous system's factory settings that got saved back in childhood. These settings define how closeness feels, how danger feels, and exactly what hoops you think you have to jump through to keep someone's love. These aren't conscious rules you wrote down in a notebook. They are deep-seated body rules. When you met this person, your internal settings recognized their specific pattern long before your conscious mind even finished saying hello. If you grew up with a parent who was warm and cuddly one day, but totally distracted and cold the next, your body learned a tough lesson. Love comes wrapped in uncertainty. Your anxious circuits wired themselves around pursuit and protest, which means you're always cranking up the vigilance and scanning for tiny cues. You end up amplifying your own signals just to get a basic response from people. Your amygdala goes hot way faster than it should. Your prefrontal cortex gets yanked into a spiral of rumination, and your whole system starts screaming that if you just work harder, you'll finally get that closeness you crave. This is why an avoidant partner, someone cool, periodic, and hard to read, fits your nervous system like a well-worn shoe. It's not because the relationship is actually good for you, but because the chaos feels like home. Now, let's flip the script. If your early caregiver was totally overwhelming, maybe they were intrusive or had zero respect for boundaries, you probably carry avoidant circuitry. You learned early on to downplay your own needs, soothe yourself in private, and keep a healthy distance just to feel safe. For you, closeness actually spikes your stress levels, so you manage that discomfort by creating space. Anxious partners feel like a massive amount of pressure, even when they're just sitting in the room with you. Their little bids for connection trip all your internal alarms, and your brain immediately labels that alarm as a loss of freedom. That whole runner-and-chaser dynamic isn't some epic romance. It's just anxious avoidant choreography set to a heavy dopamine beat. Disorganized attachment happens when a caregiver is both your safe base and the source of your fear, which creates a much more chaotic template. In this scenario, your approach and avoid signals fire at the exact same time. Your amygdala and your prefrontal cortex basically wrestle over the steering wheel, telling you to go closer and pull away in a constant, exhausting loop. That internal conflict creates high arousal, and your brain makes the mistake of thinking that intensity equals importance. When someone delivers warmth and withdrawal in a messy, alternating cycle, your entire system lights up like a Christmas tree. It isn't magic, and it isn't fate. It's just your internal mapping finding a match in the wild. The quiet architect behind all of this is caregiver misattunement. If the feeling of being seen was rare, but the feeling of being misunderstood was your daily bread, your body started equating unpredictability with genuine care. This cycle of intermittent reinforcement didn't actually start with your adult romances. It started with the sometimes I get held, sometimes I get ignored routine of your toddler years. Now that you're an adult, those intermittent texts and mixed signals recreate that exact same early schedule. Every time you get an unpredictable reply, it triggers a reward prediction error that feels better than expected. So the old template gets reinforced one more time. Your brain tells you that this is just how love works, but it's lying to you, because that's only how love worked back then. This is also where projection enters the chat. You start stitching traits from a lost parent or qualities from your own ideal self onto this new person. You give them your dad's steady voice, your mom's sharp mind, or even the fantasy courage you wish you had, and they wear it all like a mask you custom-made for them. When they do anything that even slightly resembles that mask, your brain pings with excitement, and you call it confirmation that they're the one. When they act like a jerk and don't fit the mask, you just explain it away or ignore it entirely. This destiny bias becomes a tidy little folder your prefrontal cortex uses to file away all the contradictions, so your body can keep chasing that next dopamine hit. Let's look at a microstory. You send a text, and they don't answer for 6 hours. Your old template starts screaming that you're losing them, your anxiety rises, and your cortisol levels start climbing through the roof. You spend an hour crafting the perfect message, deleting it, and rewriting it until your thumbs ache. Then, finally, the phone pings with a friendly, casual line from them. It's a big surprise and a huge relief, which causes a massive dopamine spike in your brain. Your body tags that notification as a rescue mission, not because their sentence was actually profound, but because it finally ended the alarm you've been carrying since you were a kid. Meanwhile, the avoidant template reads that kind of consistency as a direct threat to survival. A kind, steady person might text you good morning 3 days in a row, and instead of feeling safe, your body hears a voice saying, "Here comes the neediness." Your vasopressin tilts toward being possessive, and your oxytocin wants to bond. But your stress hormones are shouting that it's all too much. You pull back to drop the arousal, which causes the other person to ramp up their pursuit. And just like that, both templates get the exact schedule they expect. He chases while she distances, or she pleads while he shuts down. And while the labels might change, the dance stays exactly the same. Here's the real kicker. These templates totally bias your perception of reality. Anxious eyes will overread threat in a simple pause, but underread the threat in actual cruelty. Avoidant eyes will overread the threat in closeness, but underread the danger in emotional distance. If you have a disorganized template, you just seesaw back and forth between both extremes. This isn't a flaw in your character, it's just how you've been calibrated. Your insula reads your internal signals, like your racing heart or that churn in your gut, and your brain writes stories to match those feelings. If your gut says danger, your cortex will find a reason to justify it, and if your gut says familiar, your cortex will insist on calling it fate. So when you say this person felt like home, you really need to ask yourself which home you're talking about. Was it the one where you were chosen and cherished, or the one where you had to earn every scrap of affection? The body loves the path it already knows, even when that path leads to a cliff. Oxytocin released under threat makes bonding feel like a hit of relief medicine rather than a genuine connection. That's why the first calm hour after a massive fight can feel deeper and more real than a whole day of easy company with someone safe. You aren't actually measuring love in those moments. You're just measuring the drop in your cortisol levels. The mirror part of this is what really matters. You aren't just picking them. Your template is also picking a specific role for you to play. Are you the overgiver? Then you're going to find a professional taker. Were you the self-erased child? Then you're going to find someone who demands the entire stage. The relationship becomes a theater where your nervous system tries to renegotiate old terms with a brand new actor. You tell yourself that maybe this time, if you get everything perfect, you'll finally be kept. That isn't romance. It's a reenactment loop, and until you name it, it's going to keep repeating. The bottom line is that this match isn't magic, it's a mirror. Your template recognized a familiar pattern. Your chemistry sealed the deal, and now your mind is finally starting to catch up. Don't feel shame about it, just look at it as a map. And the best thing about maps is that they can always be redrawn. So here's the funny thing, those red flags don't actually push you away. They hook you, because unpredictable pain glues bonds together much tighter than steady care ever could. Intermittent reinforcement feels like depth to your brain, and your body mistakes that relief from arousal as absolute proof of love. Limerence, the clinical name for the obsession. So you're in the thick of it now, and we aren't just talking about a little crush or some basic attraction. Your entire mind is orbiting a person who isn't even in the room with you, which is exactly what psychologists call limerence. It's the clinical name for that total obsession, and it has a neural signature that looks a lot like a drug addiction. If you let it run unchecked, this thing will absolutely wreck your sleep, your work, and your physical health before you even realize what happened. Let's look at the shape of this beast. You're dealing with intrusive thoughts that you didn't invite and definitely can't dismiss, no matter how hard you try to focus on literally anything else. You spend your day rehearsing conversations and crafting the perfect lines. Then you go back and rerun old texts like you're looking for forensic evidence at a crime scene. Fantasy fills in all the blanks for you, so you start imagining what they meant, what they'll say next, and what your future kids will joke about at the dinner table. You tell yourself it's destiny, but here's the funny thing. It's not a prophecy, it's just your physiology. It feels destined because your reward system is blasting novelty salience at full volume, while your prefrontal cortex is basically offline from stress and lack of sleep. Intermittent reinforcement is the fuel that keeps this fire burning. When contact with this person is unpredictable, maybe they're warm today, but totally silent tomorrow, your dopamine system calculates a reward prediction error every time a response lands better than you expected. That little surprise is the actual jackpot, but it isn't the text itself that gives you the high. It's the massive wave of relief that follows the anxiety. Your body learns a simple, brutal cycle of chase, wait, and chase again. These variable ratio schedules are the fastest way to train a brain and the hardest ones to break, which is a secret that casinos and inconsistent lovers both know very well. Cue-triggered cravings are what make the whole thing so sticky. A specific song, a corner booth at a cafe, or even a hoodie that still smells like their laundry detergent can set it off, because your hippocampus and amygdala have linked these cues to the emotional surge you felt when you were together. Now, those cues reactivate the entire loop, whether that person is standing in front of you or not. You could be 5 states away and still feel your heart start climbing stairs the second that playlist hits track 3. Your brain isn't broken, it's actually being incredibly efficient by pairing what mattered with where and when it happened so you can find that feeling again. The downside is that you can't exactly use logic to argue your way out of a scent. Meanwhile, norepinephrine keeps your focus narrow and incredibly intense. You find yourself scanning for microsignals, wondering why they used a period instead of an exclamation point, or why their Instagram story featured that specific song. Oxytocin and vasopressin tilt your brain toward bonding and guarding that connection, even if the bond mostly exists inside your own head. When you feel a threat, like when they start to pull away, oxytocin doesn't just make you want to cuddle. It can actually make you double down on proximity, because your body is trying to calm itself down by moving closer to the alarm to make it stop ringing. It works for a few minutes, but in the long run, it just wires the loop even deeper into your nervous system. We have to talk about distortions, because limerence completely bends the way you think. You start mind reading and telling yourself you know they're just testing you, or you fall into confirmation bias where you bank every sign that fits your story and ignore everything that breaks it. Then there's post-diction, where you swear you knew something was going to happen all along, and destiny bias, which makes you think that if it hurts this much, it must be sacred. You might even get stuck in a sunk cost trap, telling yourself you can't quit now because you've already put a year into this. These aren't character flaws. They're just your prefrontal cortex trying to tidy up total chaos while your subcortical systems keep tugging on the lever labeled maybe. Imagine you're sitting at your desk, and it's been 3 hours with no ping from your phone. Your cortisol edges up and your appetite drops, but you keep telling yourself to stay chill until the screen finally lights up with a message that says, "Sorry, crazy day." It's one sentence with zero depth, but you feel the rush anyway because that hit is the relief curve in action. Your norepinephrine falls, your dopamine pops, and your chest finally loosens up as the vasopressin hums. Your brain doesn't tag that content as sacred because it's deep. It tags it because the timing was unpredictable. Unpredictable safety always feels deeper than predictable care, and that is the ultimate trap. If you let it run, Limerence will eventually colonize your entire calendar. You'll start timing your lunch to match their break, and checking your phone in the middle of meetings while you apologize to people like you actually meant to be present. Your sleep starts to fragment, which means your impulse control slides and your craving for those quick hits of dopamine only goes up. You keep meaning to step back, but your nervous system is constantly bargaining for one more check or one more scroll. Eventually, the loop gets a spiritual script involving guides, or signs, and suddenly your biology has a theology, which is a dangerously powerful combination. What actually helps you get out of this isn't a pep talk. It's a pattern interrupt. You have to name it for what it is by telling yourself, this is limerence, and this is just a circuit firing, not a soulmate speaking to me. Start tracking your cues and states to see which songs or places punch your buttons, then reduce your exposure to those things while your baseline stabilizes. You need to titrate your contact, which ideally means having none at all. But if you must talk to them, keep it boring and scheduled rather than rich and intermittent. Eat, sleep, and get some sun, because even though it sounds basic, basic is biochemical. When you restore your cortisol curve and lift your frontal brain function, your internal narrative finally starts to chill out. You also need to build competing rewards by finding new novelty through skills, movement, or social contact with people who actually return your texts. Create a healthy reward prediction era by surprising yourself with your own mastery instead of waiting for mixed signals from someone else. Warm and consistent people are going to feel a little flat at first because your body is calibrated to fireworks and chaos. That flatness isn't a lack of chemistry, it's just low cortisol, and you have to give it enough repetitions to feel normal again. The craving won't vanish overnight, but cravings absolutely hate daylight, and they start to shrink the moment the system stops starving. The bottom line is that limerence turns another person into a planet and makes you into a moon. It feels like fate, but it's really just a very intense form of learning. Since these loops were learned by your brain, they can absolutely be unlearned with enough time and the right perspective. So you're telling me this brain bug is out here wearing a halo? It gets even worse when spirituality gives the obsession a script, because then every red flag the twin flame like you're meant to suffer. Why it feels cosmic. So you're wide awake at 3 a.m. scrolling through your phone with that raw, wired feeling in your chest, and suddenly you stumble onto a whole new vocabulary for your chaos. You see terms like twin flames, runners and chasers, or purification through pain, and it feels like someone finally put a name to the hurricane inside you. That is exactly how the hook works, because it provides a spiritual ideology that fits the biology you're already suffering through. Let's look at the roles first, because the runner and chaser dynamic is basically just anxious avoidant attachment wearing a fancy costume. The chaser's nervous system stays primed to pursue with a hot amygdala and spiked norepinephrine, which keeps them scanning for tiny cues and fighting every silence with desperate bids for attention. On the other side, the runner manages their own stress by creating distance and protecting their autonomy, pulling away just to drop the internal heat of the connection. When you put these two together, you get a perfect variable ratio schedule of warm and cold behavior that creates a massive spike in your brain's reward prediction error every time they actually respond. This surprise drives a deep kind of learning that quickly turns into an obsession. And once that obsession feels heavy enough, people start labeling it as sacred rather than just a bad night's sleep. The script gets even more intense when you add in the purity tests, because the dogma claims that hardship is actually proof of depth. According to this logic, the rougher things get, the more evidence you have that the connection is real. So missed birthdays turn into karmic lessons, and being ghosted is rebranded as integration time. While you're telling yourself that breadcrumbs are signs you're close to a holy union, your dopamine neurons are busy doing the math on the back of a napkin. Your brain doesn't actually care about the metaphysics of your soul, but it cares deeply about variance, and the less you can predict a reward, the bigger the chemical hit feels when it finally lands. You also have oxytocin and vasopressin acting as the glue for this mess, with oxytocin rising during those late-night confessions and long voice notes that make you feel safe. When the bond feels threatened, that same oxytocin can actually make you move closer to try and calm the storm, while vasopressin makes you feel territorial over someone who barely even texts you back. If you pair those bonding chemicals with the constant cortisol of insecurity, you end up with a high arousal bond that people often describe as chemistry you can't fake. You definitely can't fake it, but you can absolutely misread it, especially when your body is confused by the stress. Then you have the community aspect, where online groups and tarot readers offer to decode your personal pain for a small fee. Every time a stranger posts a story that sounds like yours, you get a little hit of social confirmation that acts like a dopamine surge for your belief system. You aren't just a person struggling with a breakup anymore. You're a character in a cosmic narrative with thousands of co-authors who are all trained to see normal boundary setting as some kind of mystical choreography. This creates a powerful loop of identity and community that makes it almost impossible to walk away from the story. The script even includes a built-in defense mechanism where anything that challenges the belief gets labeled as ego or fear by the community. If the person treats you like garbage, you tell yourself you're just clearing old wounds. And if you try to set a healthy boundary, you're told you're blocking the union. Instead of breaking the story, new evidence just feeds it, which keeps your prefrontal cortex busy, making up excuses while your deeper brain systems keep up the chase. You end up feeling noble and principled for doubling down on the pain. But that isn't weakness. It's just how a belief protects itself from the truth. Think about a micro-story where you hear your special song in the grocery aisle and your chest warms up with a hit of oxytocin. When a "Hey stranger" text pops up on your phone 5 minutes later, you hit the jackpot, and suddenly two unrelated events feel like they were scripted by the universe. Because the overlap happened while you were in a state of high arousal, your hippocampus and amygdala file the whole scene away as something sacred. This is just post-diction kicking in to tell you that you knew it was coming all along, and confirmation bias wraps the whole thing in a pretty bow. The part people really hate to hear is that spiritual language isn't the enemy, but your own hunger is the real problem. When your body is dysregulated from poor sleep and a lack of sunlight, your system starts hunting for meaning the same way it hunts for a sugary snack. The twin flame framework hands you a gourmet dessert of complexity and destiny that makes you feel like your pain actually matters for something big. That promise of going somewhere is exactly what keeps you paying with your attention, your money, and years of your life. This framework also does a great job of masking power dynamics, because the runner avoids accountability by calling their distance a mission, while the chaser calls their overfunctioning devotion. The actual behaviors map perfectly onto the cycle of protest, pursuit, withdrawal, and soothing that defines an unhealthy attachment. Every time you reunite after a big rupture, the relief feels transcendent because your cortisol levels finally drop back down to normal. You might call that feeling a union of souls, but your body just calls it the end of a panic attack. So, is any of this real? The feelings are definitely real, and the weird coincidences do happen. But you have to remember that consistency is a much better predictor of love than intensity. Healthy repair after a fight should lead to long periods of stability rather than shorter and shorter bursts of peace. If the only time you feel close to someone is after you've been starving for their attention, you aren't experiencing love. You're experiencing deprivation euphoria. The script also does a great job of monetizing your obsession through courses and private readings meant to decode the latest silence from your partner. The more inconsistent the contact becomes, the more you feel like you need an update, which creates a business model built entirely on your brain's reaction to surprise. This isn't necessarily a conspiracy, but it is a set of incentives that rewards you for staying in a loop of inconsistency. If you want to test this, try removing the variable schedule by either scheduling your contact or stopping it entirely for a while. You will notice how quickly the signs from the universe change once your cortisol drops, and you finally get some decent sleep. Go build some novelty in other areas of your life like new skills or movement, so your dopamine has somewhere else to go besides this one person. Let steady, kind people feel boring for a few weeks while you go through withdrawal, because if a union is actually real, it will survive you setting a boundary. The twin flame script feels cosmic because it syncs up perfectly with how a hungry, stressed-out nervous system learns about the world. It takes spikes of relief and wraps them in ancient myths to make you feel like a revelation is happening. But at the end of the day, you don't need to be a special cosmic being to deserve a love that actually shows up on time. While your beliefs keep you hooked on the story, your biology is what keeps you hungry for the hit. Close the gaps in your physical health, cut the drama, and watch the destiny glow fade. The parasitic loop, how your nervous system gets farmed. So here is the engine room. You might think you're starring in a tragic love story, but your body is actually running a high-stakes farm where the crop is your attention and the fertilizer is constant surprise. When you live in a state of chronic uncertainty, It kicks your HPA axis into a feedback loop that just won't quit. Your hypothalamus pings the pituitary gland, which signals the adrenals, and suddenly cortisol starts rolling out like a thick fog at dawn. At first, this feels kind of useful because you feel alert and totally keyed in to every move they make. But when the relationship keeps flipping between hot and cold, that cortisol stops being a helpful morning boost and turns into a stressful all-day marinade for your organs. Your sleep splits into choppy, frustrating blocks, your appetite swings wildly, and a low-grade baseline anxiety hums in the background even when they aren't around. In the middle of that mental haze, something called reward prediction error, or RPE, becomes the foreman of the farm. Every unexpected text, every sudden plan, and every rare soft moment after a long dry spell triggers a better-than-expected blip in your brain. Your dopamine system notes the spike, stamps it with importance, and files it under the category of things you need to do again immediately. Here is the trap. Your brain isn't actually rewarding you for the person. It is rewarding you for the sudden shift in the pattern. It craves the variance, not the virtue. You start unconsciously seeking out the exact conditions that maximize that RPE. The distance, the doubt, and the delays, because those are the things that produce the biggest chemical pop. While it feels like you're losing your mind, biologically speaking, the process is actually very tidy and predictable. Meanwhile, a hormone called vasopressin starts making you feel incredibly territorial and on edge. Their vague Instagram stories spark mental images you just can't shake. Your jaw clenches for no reason, and you find yourself scanning social media at 1 a.m. for any sign of arrival. Because your oxytocin system feels under threat, it pushes you toward proximity seeking, which is just a fancy way of saying you feel a desperate need to reach out. You send that text just to calm the internal system that their inconsistency spiked in the first place. That massive wave of relief you feel when they finally answer is the drug-like drop where your norepinephrine falls, your cortisol eases, and your dopamine rises. Your body records this as a successful rescue mission. The next time the internal alarm screams, your brain will demand that exact same rescue, which is how the loop farms you by using your need for relief to keep you coming back for more. Withdrawal is what finally seals the deal and makes it feel impossible to leave. When the contact stops, you don't just miss their personality, you start experiencing actual physical symptoms. Your sleep fragments into shallow dozes, you wake up way too early with your mind racing, and food starts alternating between tasting like cardboard and being totally irresistible. All your usual pleasure flattens out into a grey blur. This is a classic dopamine deficit state where your system spent weeks riding high spikes. So now the normal baseline feels empty and cold. Your body starts telling you a story that you are empty because they were your other half. But that isn't the truth. The reality is that your reward circuits were whipped into a frenzy by variable ratio training, and now they are painfully recalibrating to a world without the chaos. Every almost contact you have opens up what scientists call a memory reconsolidation window. You see their name pop up on your phone, your heart rate jumps through the roof, and old memories start replaying in your head with fresh, vivid color. This is a label state, where your memories are actually soft and ready to be updated or changed. If the interaction ends up being warm, your brain restamps the old myth by telling itself that they clearly still care. If the interaction is cold, you will scramble to protect your original belief, and the loop deepens regardless of what actually happened. This is exactly why those closure talks usually make everything feel 10 times worse. Each point of contact is just another chance for your brain to re-tag the bond as significant. So if you want that tag to fade, you have to stop the restamping process entirely. Then we have to talk about tolerance, because what felt like a feast in week 2 usually becomes nothing but crumbs by month 6. You start escalating your behavior just to keep the feeling alive, which leads to longer texts, bigger emotional bids, and much riskier moves. The highs start to shrink while the crashes get wider, and eventually, your entire day gets organized around managing the next burst of reward prediction error. This creates an allostatic load, which is the literal wear and tear of chronic stress on your body. It changes how your nervous system sets its version of normal, shifting your default state toward constant vigilance. You aren't just obsessing about a person anymore. You have started living like the entire world is built on a foundation of maybe. Here is the meanest part of the whole design. Because your system is so fried, steady care and consistent love now read as low signal to your brain. It doesn't ping the sensors, and it doesn't cut through the mental fog as sharply as the chaos did. You end up labeling healthy people as boring or saying there is no spark. But that isn't a deep truth about them. It's just a matter of your internal calibration. Your receptors have been trained to expect fireworks, so normal porch lights look incredibly dim by comparison. If you gave yourself enough time in predictable light, your eyes would eventually adapt and see clearly again. But in the parasitic loop, you never give yourself that time because you keep leaving at twilight to go chase the lightning. Imagine a microstory. You're in the shower, doing fine, and then you suddenly remember their birthday is next week. A surge of norepinephrine slides you into a narrow mental tunnel where you can only think about one thing. You spend an hour picturing the perfect, casual message, but you hold back and send nothing for most of the day. All day long your brain is bargaining with itself until you finally crack at 9:47 p.m. and send a simple, hope it's a good one. 10 minutes later, they reply with a thanks, and the relief slaps you so hard it feels like a physical weight lifting. Your mind translates that chemical slap into deep cosmic meaning, and the farm logs another successful yield for the season. So how do you actually starve the loop? First, you have to stabilize your physical body by sleeping way more than you think you need. Eat protein and fiber early in the day to keep your glucose steady, and make sure you get real sunlight in your eyes before you look at any screens. Doing this resets your cortisol and helps wake up your prefrontal cortex so you can think straight. Second, you have to cut the variance by ending all unscheduled contact. If you absolutely have to talk about logistics, put those conversations into a narrow, predictable window, like Tuesday at 2 o'clock, instead of just whenever. Third, you need to strip away the cues by archiving message threads, muting shared playlists, and changing your driving routes. The fewer jolts you give your amygdala and hippocampus, the less often that craving cycle will trigger. You also need to create countervariance, which is just reliable novelty in other areas of your life. Find skills you can measurably improve, make social plans that you know will actually happen, and start a movement practice with very clear milestones. These things produce a healthy version of reward prediction error without all the social chaos. When that withdrawal voice in your head starts whispering that you're losing the magic, you need to answer it like a scientist. Tell yourself, I am not losing anything. I am recalibrating my receptors. Because that is literally what is happening as you shift your nervous system from chaos-based learning back to stability-based learning. The parasitic loop isn't a curse you're stuck with. It's just a design quirk of being human. If you close those shock windows and feed your baseline, the farm eventually stops running. Get this, after weeks of fireworks, steady calm feels like a total blackout. That is just withdrawal faking the truth to get its fix. If you stay with the quiet long enough, your eyes will finally adjust. Boring isn't empty. It is actually nervous system oxygen. Just keep breathing.